protect private property. Section 1. When any governmental entity acts not to secure a private property right against actions that injure property owners, but to take property for a public use from a property owner by actual seizure or through regulation, which taking results in a market value reduction of the property, interference with the use of the property, or a financial loss to the property owner exceeding $10,000, the government shall compensate fully said property owner for such losses. Influenced by luminaries such as John Locke and William Blackstone, the founders understood that the fundamental right to own and maintain property was an essential element in a functioning civil society. In the Second Treatise of Government, which was hugely popular during the American founding and heavily relied on by Thomas Jefferson in drafting the Declaration of Independence, Locke asserted, "The government cannot take from any man any part of his property without his own consent. For the preservation of property being the end of government, and that for which men enter into society, it necessarily supposes and requires that the people should have property, without which they must be supposed to lose that by entering into society, which was the end for which they entered into it, too gross an absurdity for any man to own." In his celebrated Commentaries on the Laws of England, Blackstone also extols the right to property. So great is the regard of the law for private property that it will not authorize the least violation of it, no, not even for the general good of the whole community. If a new road, for instance, were to be made through the grounds of a private person, it might perhaps be extensively beneficial to the public. But the law permits no man or set of men to do this without consent of the owner of the land. Blackstone added that the public good is in nothing more essentially interested than in the protection of every individual's private right, as modeled by the municipal law. Owning and preserving property, free from oppressive government intrusion, serves as one of the fundamental building blocks for a prosperous republic. James Madison noted, "Government is instituted no less for protection of property than of the persons, of individuals." In short, property rights are unalienable rights. The rights of property are committed into the same hands with the personal rights. Some attention ought therefore to be paid to property in the choice of those hands. Gouverneur Morris, a widely influential founder, observed that enshrining property rights in a civil society was a necessary antecedent to any concept of a functioning community. Without society, property in goods is extremely precarious. There is not even the idea of property in lands. Like Madison, Morris believed that an elemental purpose of any government was the preservation of property. Conventions to defend each other's goods naturally apply to the defense of those places where the goods are deposited. The object of such conventions must be to preserve for each his own share. Thus, property is the principal cause and object of society. George Mason declared in the Virginia Declaration of Rights, the precursor to the Declaration of Independence, that all men are by nature equally free and independent, and have certain inherent rights, namely, the enjoyment of life and liberty, with the means of acquiring and possessing property. Perhaps John Adams put it best when he wrote, "Suppose a nation, rich and poor, high and low, 10 millions in number, all assembled together. Not more than 1 or 2 millions will have lands, houses, or any personal property. If we take into the account the women and children, or even if we leave them out of the question, a great majority of every nation is wholly destitute of property, except a small quantity of clothes and a few trifles of other movables. Would Mr. Needham be responsible that, if all were to be decided by a vote of the majority, The 8 or 9 millions who have no property would not think of usurping over the rights of the 1 or 2 millions who have. Property is surely a right of mankind as really as liberty. Perhaps, at first, prejudice, habit, shame or fear, principle or religion would restrain the poor from attacking the rich, and the idle from usurping on the industrious. But the time would not be long before courage and enterprise would come, and pretexts be invented by degrees to countenance the majority in dividing all the property among them, or at least in sharing it equally with its present possessors. Debts would be abolished first, taxes laid heavy on the rich and not at all on the others, and at last a downright equal division of everything be demanded and voted. What would be the consequence of this? The idle, the vicious, the intemperate would rush into the utmost extravagance of debauchery, sell and spend all their share, and then demand a new division of those who purchased from them. The moment the idea is admitted into society that property is not as sacred as the laws of God, and that there is not a force of law and public justice to protect it, anarchy and tyranny commence.